Bad news for West Ham United fans and bad news for David Moyes as well. I'll get onto that in a bit. But for the update, Jacob Steinberg has done a report stating that Lucas Paqueta is out for up to 4 weeks. He had his scans yesterday. He's got his personal trainer who is flying into London, and he will be working closely with the player himself because Paqueta wants to get this fixed. Obviously, he had the calf injury in the warm-up prior to the Arsenal game, the Brighton game, the Arsenal game. He felt it in the warm-up. He started that game, went off injured, missed the Brighton one, came back for the Bristol City game, went off after 15 minutes or whatever it was. Had a scan on yesterday, Monday, and the news has come back to West Ham that he is going to be out for 4 weeks. So massive blow to lose Lucas Paqueta. Now, if it was only Paqueta, you could probably stomach it. But we're now missing our front four for what could be a month. Now, the Jarrod Bowen injury is still unclear. His ankle's that badly swollen. It's difficult for them to give it a proper diagnosis, but they're not encouraged. The phrase that Steinberg used was it wasn't encouraging for West Ham, but it's still unclear. I can't even sit here and say, hopefully it's not bad. I feel like I'd be almost lying to myself to inject a little bit of false hope into it. You're almost preparing for a worst case scenario with Jarrod Bowen, not necessarily the end of the season or anything, but being out for a similar amount of time as to what Paqueta is. Obviously, yesterday we discovered that Michail Antonio is out. Well, Saturday we discovered he's injured. Yesterday we got a timeline. Antonio will be out for 4 to 6 weeks as well. And then, of course, Mohammed Kudus, well, he's got a hamstring injury. He's unavailable anyway. I think he's just going to be back when he was due back, which is after the end of the African Nations, whenever that is, depending on how far Ghana get in the competition. So we're without Kudus for a month, without Paqueta for a month, without Antonio for 6 weeks, and Bowen has a question mark at the minute. Not good. Really not good for West Ham. We've been really fortunate with injuries so far this season. The sort of injury league table came out towards the end of the year, just a couple of months ago, and we were at the top of it. 0 injuries, happy days. So we've been lucky with injuries, and now they've all arrived at once. You can throw in Mavropanos to that because we're still waiting to hear how badly his injury is. Agerd is also unavailable, so it's not good for West Ham, and it's not good for David Moyes. Now, this is where we're quite fortunate in the sense that we're at the beginning of our transfer window. We've still got 3 weeks to do business. So I am going to use the phrase no excuses for West Ham, actually. It's the 9th of January, and they've been delivered this news regarding their front four. Their 4 attackers are now out for a month. What are you going to do about it? I think it's fair to assume that we probably won't have any signings for the Bristol City one and maybe not the Sheffield United one. But we need to make sure we've got some reinforcements in. I am now worried that the club will do the opposite, in which is what they're hinting at in regards to Danny Ings, which is, oh no, we can't let Danny Ings go. Antonio's injured. And I have a horrible feeling that this news about Lucas Paqueta and lack of news with Jarrod Bowen will mean that they'll hold the same stance with Saïd Benrahma. Now, I don't think Pablo Fornals was going to go in this transfer window unless a silly offer came in. I think they've earmarked him for the summer. But Saïd Benrahma in particular, it feels like he is off. He's done another cryptic post on his social media to suggest that his time at West Ham has come to an end. And I just hope West Ham don't put the brakes on this one and say, hey, hang on a minute, we're going to have to wait and see. We're going to have to wait and see what happens before we can let Benrahma go. I would like the opposite. I would like this to speed up the sale of Saïd Benrahma. I'd like it to speed up the exit of Danny Ings at West Ham to get any funds we can into the club in order to go and get these reinforcements. Because what this does do, it prevents a massive issue for David Moyes, but it also prevents a massive opportunity for some players at the club as well. Now, the first 2 that come to mind are Mubama and Marshall. Mubama's already getting minutes. It's quite clear so far he requires a lot in terms of being ready for the Premier League. Well, now he's just got an opportunity. Now the front 4 are injured, and it's going to be tough for him. He was already struggling with Jarrod Bowen next to him. How he's going to cope with Fornals and Benrahma either side of him, probably not very well. However, he will get a lot of game time and he will learn a lot playing Premier League centre-backs for the next few weeks, obviously Bristol City aside, but still it's a really good standard for him to learn. So an opportunity has presented itself for Mubama. and Callum Marshall. The under-21s are in action tonight against Wycombe. What better motivation for those boys than to hear that Paqueta's out and Antonio's out, Kudus is out, Bowen's out. This is where one whisper to Callum Marshall saying, you do well tonight. The gaffer can't ignore you. You're going to have to be in the team for Bristol City, regardless of transfers. Marshall's probably going to have to be in that squad next Tuesday. Go grab your shirt. Go take that opportunity tonight. And I hope they do it. We've been waiting for opportunities for some of the youngsters. There has possibly been some that the manager's ignored. Well, there's no excuses now. And it's a bit of a free hit for David Moyes. If he starts bringing in Marshall and Mubama, we can't really complain too much because I'd still much rather see them than Danny Ings or Pablo Fornals. So that's an opportunity. The other opportunity is if we sign players. Now, the one player we're linked to quite a lot in the last 24 hours is Jack Clarke of Sunderland. Now, I did a video on Saturday, and I'd love him. I'd love Jack Clarke at West Ham. A couple of hours later, Newcastle played Sunderland, and he was crap. Clarke struggled. He didn't get into the game whatsoever. So it wasn't a good showing for him up against a Premier League side. However, I still want him at West Ham. I'm not written him off because of that performance, but what it does do is suggest that maybe there's a bit of a learning curve for him in order to step up to Premier League level. If he was a number one target, I think there's even more reason to go get him now because the pressure's off him. He can come in and he's not competing with Paqueta. He's not competing with Bowen because they're out. He goes straight into the 11 and he's got a handful of games where he will pick up a lot of minutes. So it's almost become an opportunity for the new signings to come in and get straight into the starting 11. No settling in, nothing. In you go and let's see what you've got because it's desperate times. It is. It's hard not to look at this news and think, this is going to derail our season. And this is the problem which I'm speaking about. And that is David Moyes. Whilst we have done well, We're sitting in a really good position in the league. And this is why I'm calm. If we were mid-table, if we were 12th in the league right now, I'd be worrying. I'd be thinking, hang on a minute, how many points is there between us and that bottom three? Because we're away to concede a lot of points in the next month. This is going to be difficult. But because we're 6th, we can afford to. It might be goodbye to the European dream. But the worst case scenario is we probably go on and finish 12th in the Premier League. It's not the end of the world. And it means that come March, all eggs in the Europa League basket. Those players will be back by then. Hopefully we don't pick up more injuries. But when the Europa League comes round, it might be that the league has forced us to really concentrate on the Europa League and try and win that competition. So in terms of the impact of the injuries, it's not terrible. But I think it is for David Moyes because a lot of the wins recently have come through individual brilliance. And we've seen against Bristol City and we've seen against Brighton without Kudus and Paqueta that when we can't rely on those top stars to do something, we struggle. So I think it's fair to suggest that tactically we're maybe going to come up against it in the next month while these players are out. Even if Jarrod Bowen was to come back, by the way, even just without Paqueta and Kudus and the option of Michail Antonio there, I think it's fair to suggest that Moyes is really going to struggle because some of the fixtures are difficult as well. We've got Sheffield United, which is the easiest one. Obviously, we've got Bristol City, but Sheffield United is the easiest one. And then off the top of my head, we've got Bournemouth, Arsenal and Man United. That's tricky games, even with those players available. So when you take them out, it's hard not to look at it and fear the worst to some extent because we don't have the X factor anymore. We have 3 players capable of it, and all 3 players are out. So now it puts the emphasis on David Moyes saying, well, what are you going to conjure up that's going to win this game? Because we can't rely on individual brilliance. We now have to come up with something tactically to outmaneuver the opponents. And I don't have that faith in that occurring. So with the news of this injuries, it's hard not to foresee anything other than a miserable run of form. I say performances, they haven't always been the greatest anyway. But West Ham without Paqueta, Kudus and Bowen, it's hard to get excited, isn't it? Anyway, let's take some of your comments as well in relation to the players. Get it into the live chat. Daniel makes a really good point, which is this will see the end of any contract extension. And also, Moyes, it's still up in the air at the minute, even though what Moyes has said and sort of a couple of in the nose have suggested, which is that he will get his contract offer. It's not signed yet. And whilst talks may be planned, at the same time, any talks could be put on hold just as quickly. And I think for him to go in and get his new contract, he'd almost have to make it difficult for the club to not renew it. And I think that would mean European football. If he got European football again via the league or the Europa League or the FA Cup, I think it would be hard to deny giving Moyes a new contract, regardless of what you want, by the way, in terms of what he deserves. I think it would be hard to deny that he deserves one. But this would probably reduce the chances of European football, which in turn, as Daniel suggests, reduces the chances or the probability of David Moyes getting a new contract. So bad news for him on a personal level as well as West Ham in terms of a squad. Steve says we're in trouble. Jamie's reminding us that Jesse Lingard's free. Obviously, in the news today after Paul Scholes suggested he gets out the gym and gets back to football. Mancunian said we've never made a contingency plan for an occurrence like this. We will badly struggle. I agree with that one. Mikey said we're going to drop quicker than a so-and-so's panties shortly. Watch this space. End up finishing in between 11th and 13th, so 12th. We're going to finish, I know what you mean, inclusive of. It's just the way, sorry, Mikey. He thinks we're going to finish 11th, 12th, or 13th. Moyes has no plan B. He hasn't even got a plan A. Woody's asking if it's changed my opinion on the FA Cup and how much of a priority is it. The next round is the 27th, 28th, so we'll like still have injuries. I would argue it's more important to win the Bristol City game now, so we've actually got something else to look forward to. And this is on the assumption, this is on the basis that I think we're going to concede a few points in the league and the top 6 and 7 would become difficult. I still have hope that we can get 8th, but that relies on Liverpool winning the Carabao Cup. By the way, we need to be Liverpool fans. Tomorrow night, we need to be supporting Liverpool for that Conference League spot to get allocated to the league. So we need them to go on and win the Carabao Cup. But it requires a few things to happen, including England's coefficient. So I think having the FA Cup, bearing in mind we've got a winnable tie. Us and Bristol City have a winnable tie in the next round at home to Nottingham Forest or Blackpool. I don't care who it is. I would expect to beat them. So we have the advantage that actually whoever's up next, we've got a good chance of beating them. I'd fancy us to beat Nottingham Forest without Kudus and Paqueta. If Bowen was back, I'd still fancy a chance against Nottingham Forest. So I think, if anything, it's emphasised the importance of the FA Cup for me, because if we go out the FA Cup and start conceding points in the league, it's literally all eggs in one basket in the Europa League, and I'd like to have the FA Cup there as well. Michael said Sean and Darmesh are convinced it's done the contract. I know what they're saying, but I just wonder if this might just, like I said, Michael, it takes a long time to do a contract negotiation, but it takes very little time to put that on hold just to wait and see what's occurring. Minnie said, do you understand why we appear to have waited until the transfer window is open to start looking? I think it's trying to get players out. Minnie, I don't necessarily agree with it, but I get the feeling that that's what they're trying to do. They've got Kerr gone quick, and it feels like they're trying to shift on Benrahma and Ings quickly as well. But then if they do that, they may look to reinvest. Lewis said it's hard to blame anyone for injuries, but key players have played unnecessary minutes recently, and we flog the same 11 every week, regardless of the number of games. Injuries feel inevitable. I'm a bit like that. I'm reluctant to go in two-footed on David Moyes regarding Lucas Paqueta. Kudus, it's a thing. It's away to African nations. That's fine. Bowens, I think, is unfortunate. There's no indication he was injured or carrying it and not coming into this one. Tends to be really good with injuries. Doesn't really pick them up. So Bowens just unfortunate. Antonio is Antonio. He was injury prone before David Moyes arrived, and he's been less injury prone under David Moyes and previous managers. The only one you can put at the door of Moyes is Lucas Paqueta. But in that regard, I'm reluctant to blame any manager. And this isn't Moyes, this is any manager at any club. I'm reluctant to blame managers because they're not medical experts. The medical experts, there's a department of specialists trained and paid well in order to look after player welfare and to advise the manager and to tell the manager what players are available and not available, so on and so forth. So there's that barrier in place. So they've signed off Paqueta playing against Bristol City. He had training session the day prior as well. Yes, Moyes could have not risked him, and I personally wouldn't have risked him. You go back to the preview, wouldn't have played Paqueta. I get why Moyes did it. But he's not blameless. He's got to take some of the blame. But I think so does the medical team and so does Lucas Paqueta, because it's the same injuries prior. And after he picked up that calf injury against Arsenal, Paqueta was saying, I'll be out for a week. I'll miss the Brighton game. I'll be back for the next one. And now he's out for 4 weeks. So Paqueta's got responsibility. The medical department have got responsibility. And David Moyes and his coaching staff have got responsibility as well. All of them do. I think they're all accountable for Paqueta's injury. And Mikey says if he'd integrated some youth over the past 2 seasons, we'd maybe have had some decent cover. Scott says David Moyes' time to shine. If he pulls off results with all these injuries, then fair play, but not confident at all. This is Scott. I'm completely in agreement with that. Wasim thinks that the new manager is already in place for the new season. All this talk about a new Moyes contract is hot air. It's hard to ignore, though, Wasim. Sean, Darmesh both got really good contacts at the club, and David Moyes himself has said that he's going to be sitting down for talks. It's hard to ignore. We'll just have to wait and see. Johnny says it's unlucky these injuries have happened at once. Those saying we should have rested players against Bristol City are probably those moaning about resting players against Liverpool. Peter says, good job, Sheffield United haven't got 2 weeks to work on beating us. Not as if they've signed anyone, such as Bennett and Diaz. Oh, hold on. Connor says, user site just put out that we are nowhere near to signing anybody and blamed it on clubs not wanting to sell anyone. I think I could guess who you're talking about. Is it a certain C&H site, Connor? And Charlie said that's a dream, winning the Bristol game will give us a future FA Cup game for Alvarez, etc. to get injured in. Chris said these injuries give Moyes so many excuses on losing so many games. He will use it in every interview. I didn't consider that, Chris. Thanks for that. Daniel said this isn't about Moyes, though, but the impact of how the club has run from top. Knee-jerk and absence of any long-term planning and sustained ambition. Eastside Views says season's done. I disagree. I think we've got the Europa League. Even if you take all these 4 players' injuries at worst-case scenario, they'll all be back when we're playing the Europa League. So we've still got that. Do I think we'll win it? No. But I don't think the season's done. I don't think so. I think we might not have as many things to be playing for by March, but I still think, well, the Europa League's there, and we're still in the FA Cup currently, kind of half in, half out. There's still plenty to play for. It's bad news, but it's not season over. It's season impacted, and it's going to be a tough watch for the next month. And like I said, I think we will drop points. I think we're going to struggle. But by the time the Europa League comes around, the players will be back. So Jamie says, seriously, this is the perfect time to use Earthing Coat. No excuses for Moyes, as we can't depend on Ings and others. I completely agree, Jamie. It's an opportunity, and it gives Moyes, he can't lose. Moyes can't lose here. If Moyes starts dropping Souček playing Lewis Orford, and Orford gets annihilated, and then there will be criticism for him. But when he's playing Earthy instead of Fornals, I struggle to see many people saying, hey, what are you doing, Dave? I don't want him to see play just youngsters. He's going to have 1 or 2 senior players in and around them. And this is where Mubama's introduction to the first team 12 months ago will benefit us and will benefit him a lot. It's not a new environment to him. But it's a perfect opportunity for Moyes to play 1 or 2 of the youngsters. Stephen, did we get any word on my plans? Thank you, Stephen. I missed that out. The word is there's no word. The club are still waiting to find out the extent of Mavropanos' injury. In fact, the actual injury hasn't really been reported. There's some saying it's his rib/chest, some saying it's his shoulder. So I think the club are being a bit secret in regards to how badly Mavropanos is injured, assuming they know, which makes me worried. Because if we go back to the Michail Antonio injury, the news came out he's going to be out for potentially up to the season. Moyes came out and said, oh, no, 2 weeks. He's out for 2 weeks. I mean, it's been a couple of months now, and he's only just back. Now, I know he's injured, but he'd only just come back. He was out for a lot longer than David Moyes made on. Philip says, sooner we get this month out the way, the better. Honestly, if we don't get the recruitment right, we're bang in trouble, stating the obvious. But it depends what you mean by in trouble. I always assume in trouble means relegation, which obviously I completely disagree with. I'm not saying you mean that, Philip. This is my interpretation of the phrase in trouble. If it means we're going to get booted out of the Europa League and finish bottom half of the Premier League, possibly. Let's have a little look. Michail says Paqueta needs to take some responsibility himself. Only he knows how he feels. Mancunian says should never put Bowen and Paqueta in harm's way against a side that were trying to win by assault. I dreaded watching us before these players got injured. Were painful to watch. I'm thinking a little bit like that as well. It's a bit hard to look forward to the Sheffield United game. Nick says, have faith in transfer windows, starting under a great summer. And if we can strengthen on the left and offload players Moyes won't play, we can have a great second half. There's some positivity. I agree with what you're saying, Nick. If we can get in a couple of players, like I said, Jack Clark's one I'm picking out. If we'd signed him and everyone was fit, he was probably going to struggle for minutes. He wouldn't go straight into the 11. He'd have to wait. And he might get 10, 15 minutes here and there, and he might force his way in. But I wouldn't have been surprised. Come the end of the season, Clark only had a handful of starts to his name. But should we sign Clark or someone like Clark, he can go straight into the team now. There are some positives, and we are scraping the barrel here, Nick. We're clutching at straws, but there is one or two opportunities for David Moyes. Ray says we still need to clear Deadwood and take our upcoming loss. Let some youth play, even though I don't think they're going to make it. Lewis said that's the issue when you have incredible players, you become reliant on them to deliver. We need some of the rest to step up in the absence of key players. Stephen says Brighton had a slump with injuries, Newcastle the same. I think we'll slog through the next 4 matches and hopefully click on for the business end of the season. Yuri says Paqueta's wife said on Instagram he's rushed back as though he wasn't fully recovered and it was quite obvious it was going to get worse. She said it in Portuguese. Thank you, Yuri. It's a social media platform I follow. Alice runs our Instagram very kindly. Mancunian said Brighton and Liverpool in Europa League. We're not fancy us over 2 legs against either side. I know we beat Brighton this season. Well, we beat them and drew with them. So you never know. It depends. But like I said, March, Europa League's in March. It's difficult to really say too much because we don't know who will be available and who won't be. Alan says, as frustrating as Moyes can be, he's capable of grinding out results with weakened squads. I'm not sure if it will involve many youngsters still, sadly. I don't have too much hope, truth be told, Alan. It's just maybe against Sheffield United we could, but after that Bournemouth, Arsenal, Man United, it's tough to feel too optimistic at the minute. Michael, who's about on loan or decent fee? I wouldn't bother with free transfers. They've not been playing all season. They've been available all season. Nobody's picked them up. It would take them ages. By the time they got match fit, the players that are injured will be back. In terms of loans, well, Ian Matson going to Dortmund, I'm disappointed about. Jadon Sancho would have been worth a punt. I still think there's a couple of other players from Chelsea that could potentially be available on loan that we can maybe look at. When Fabio Carvalho went to Hull, I was surprised the Premier League side didn't really contest that one. They might have done, and Liverpool perhaps had no interest in letting him join a Premier League club. But he wouldn't have been someone I would have been upset at getting. I don't think we're a direct rival for Liverpool. I don't think Liverpool think we are either. So it's one of those players I wouldn't have minded, but it's difficult to know who's available on loan until they go on loan. Whereas you might get the feeling certain players are available to buy, but in terms of loans, I think you've almost got to be a specialist in your own club. Because at the minute, even as West Ham fans, is Saïd Benrahma available for loan? Probably not. Is Pablo Finales? Probably not. Is Ben Johnson? No. Do we have anyone available for loan? Probably, maybe Callum Marshall. Well, this is the domino effect of the injuries, isn't it? Any plans Marshall and Mbama had on going on loan this month, they might just have to say, sorry, you can't go on loan. Your development's going to get hindered because you're now required in the senior squad for a month. Come to mid-February, these players could be back. Marshall and Mbama are struggling to get minutes in the senior squad again. So it's a bit of a tough one, actually, for Martin Noble, I would guess, and Carlton Cole, who's now the new loan manager at West Ham. So Cole and Noble have probably got a bit of a predicament here. Not with Mbama. I think it's an easy one. Leave him. But with Marshall, there was a lot of talk he's going to sign a new contract and go straight out on loan. Well, can we afford to do that now? Probably not. But can we afford to keep him for the rest of the season and sort of hinder his own personal development? Again, probably not. So it's a tricky one. It's a bit damned if you do, damned if you don't in regards to Callum Marshall. But what it does mean is he could potentially have a month to impress and grab a spot. So actually, I'm not saying he's going to keep Paqueta out, but when Paqueta and Co are back, he's a viable option off the bench. He basically gets rid of Fornals and Ben Rama. That's his job, to come in so that when the big boys come back, he's now ahead of Ben Rama, Cornet, and Fornals in the pecking order of David Moyes. That's what it is. But it's all the old domino effect, isn't it? And this is one small positive from Phil. Paqueta ain't going anywhere. I don't think he was going anywhere in January transfer window, but I don't think he's. And Martin says that 6 is looking at distant memory. I agree. It's wild that when you're 6th in the league, you should be looking up, but it does feel like we're probably going to be looking our shoulders a little bit. Lee says, "It is what it is. It's going to be difficult. We've got to get through it. All that we ask for is 100% graft." I think most players have been grafting and given 100%. They're just not always good enough, unfortunately. Anyway, I'm going to shut up and disappear. I just want to do a quick update, and I've been chatting for 26 minutes. Nice one, Gio. I'm going to disappear now. A video earlier about Saeed Ben Rama potentially leaving, and then I'll be back later on with a review of the under-21s game. They play Wickham tonight in the quarter-final. Gonzo's off to it, so there'll be content over on Patreon. And tomorrow morning, me and Gonzo will be doing a player ratings video from the under-21s game as well for any patrons interested. But I'm going to disappear. If you've enjoyed this video, please do drop a like on it. Not if you like the news, but if you've enjoyed the content or you appreciate the content, dropping a like on it would be appreciated. Subscribe to Hammer's Chat, and I'll catch up with you later on this evening.